So hi, my name is Sofia Andrade,
I am Andres Rodriguez.
and we are going to present you an investigation we have been doing. So we have investigated the level of literary analysis of the students of high school at the GLM. We have identified a problem. As we interviewed the students, we came to the conclusion that they understand literary analysis as taking a piece of work, reading it, and reviewing it to get the main meaning. What we could understand is when students analyze a piece of literature, they focus just on the meaning behind the text and they forget the unity and effect that the piece creates. They don't take into account the details, imagery, and connotation that creates the whole text. The most difficult part for the students in high school grades is identifying a meaning behind the text. They have difficulties. They have difficulties analyzing it and creating a coherent text that demonstrates their ideas clearly. To understand better the situation, we talked to some language department teachers to explain what are the difficulties that their students are having. Teachers agreed that the most common mistakes the students commit when analyzing literature is they consider that details are irrelevant and consequently they forget about them. Students are also prone to make serious logical mistakes in their reasoning and not able to present their ideas coherently. So for this, we have said that close reading is the best example. It is the exercise of analyzing a piece of literature and its main intention and the whole unity of it by analyzing details and creating a relationship with the text and taking the text as a whole.
Basically, we consider that the first thing you should do when analyzing a text is to include a thesis statement which has the implicit meaning of a work. Second, a summary of the reading which is concise but explains very well. Then you should analyze the diction, then the setting, the characters, the point of view, and finally you should conclude by giving your personal opinion on the story's meaning. Also, you have to remember that all this has to have unity, which means all this has to be related with the thesis you perform. So, we also consider that new criticism is something important to know, and it is a critical approach to literature which utilizes the method of close reading in order to analyze a piece of literature. It also makes use of textual evidence to prove each and every statement. The main characteristic from this critical approach is the fact that it focuses on the meaning by the text alone without considering its context. It concentrates on analyzing the form, diction, and structure of a work and makes logical inferences based on those. In this particular video, we analyzed the story called To Build a Fire by Jack London. Published in 1902, the story talks about a man that is crossing a mountain while a very powerful snowstorm is taking place. The story describes how the man is being escorted by a dog does not have any relationship with him, and it expresses how brutal the weather was and how the effects of cold were on the man. Also, it stresses how it was impossible for him to make a fire for the second time and how he consequently ended up dying from the cold, um, full of regret for not having listened to the experts' advice. So the setting always also refers to the time, context, environment, and place in which the story takes place. In this case, the setting is a mountain pass which undergoes a heavy storm. Um, as described at the beginning of the story, uh, and I quote, there was no sun or promise of sun, although there was not a cloud in the sky. It was a clear day. However, there seemed to be an indescribable darkness over the face of things. That was the sun was absent from the sky. The Yukon lay a mile wide and hidden under 3 feet of ice. On top of this ice were as many feet of snow. It was all pure white, north and south. As far as his eye could see, it was unbroken white. Eye
So
close.
another thing that is important to analyze is the conflict. The man experiences an external conflict with nature because he is fighting against a brutal weather that is taking place while he is crossing the mountain pass. It is a conflict that unfolds when the man dies thanks to the effect that the harsh weather had on him. Consequently, the nature is the winner of the story's conflict. An external conflict refers to the type of conflict in which the character fights as against an external force. There are different types of conflict. Him versus himself, him versus society, him versus an external force, and him versus morality and his inside problems. So,
The point of view is also something very important to analyze here. Here, the story is told using an omniscient point of view because it is told by someone who does not take place in the story, but that knows everything and enters into the minds of the characters and know what they are desiring and what they are feeling.
Okay, so another important aspect to take into account, three important aspects actually, is diction, tone, and mood. The diction of the story and the way the story is written adds to the effect of it. The language used in the text is coherent, emotional, literary, and exact. Judging by the sheer numbers of adjectives that it uses to describe the man's external conflict with nature, also by the simple language that the story uses, and the way the sentences are medium short, declarative, and simple and simple sentences by the amount of these of words that they use, and in each way they are just stating. These are some examples. That was because the sun was absent from the sky. Period. This fact did not worry the man. Period. He was not alarmed by the locked sun. Period. It had been days since he had seen the sun. Period. Another couple of examples of the description of these sentences are: there seemed to be an indescribable darkness, period, or exceedingly cold and gray. Okay, so this is like the diction that the author used. Then the tone, being serious, helps to create the irony because it helps to describe nature as the one that gives life, but also to the exaggerated descriptions how nature takes life away. The way tone is portrayed creates tension in the story, and the one that creates the tension in the author in the reader. Sorry. So that's the mood in the atmosphere. So a piece of writing. So it's important to remember that diction is a literary term that relates to the author word choice. Mood is the atmosphere of a piece of writing, and the tone is the author attitude towards the subject. So then characters. There's the main man. That's the protagonist, and the protagonist is the one that can be described as a dynamic character because he's constantly evolving physically and intellectually throughout the story. The man evolves physically because as time passes, he spends more time in story. He becomes more and more sick and weak because of it, to the point in which he was unable to match a fire. He also evolves mentally because he starts his adventure being confident that he does not need anyone to travel with, and thinking that it will be very easy because cold does not represent any danger to him. However, he ends up regretting his choices that eventually lead him to his death, losing the fire. So it's important to highlight that dynamic character refers to a type of character that undergoes through deep changes throughout the course of this history. And the last thing that I'm going to talk about is symbolism. And there's an important symbol in the story that is the dog. The dog is a symbol, that accompanies the man throughout the road. Is a symbol that represents the way nature is always finding a way to survive. It relies on instinct and what is useful at the moment. An example of this is when the dog falls into the water and he freezes fast, so his instinct tells him to choose the eyes off of his paws. And there is another one that is, but the animal sensed the danger. It feared it made it question eagerly every moment of the man, as if expecting him to go into a camp or seek a shelter somewhere and build a fire. It's important to highlight that symbol in the story. A symbol or symbolism is using an immature concept to represent an idea. So in this symbol, it's just a representation of at the end how nature always shows a way and finds a way to survive, and when it's no longer useful something, it disregards it. And in imagery, the story is set in a frozen road in -70 temperature, and there is nothing to be seen. And this it helps the description of this helps the the reader to immerse in the story, and there are some details and the description of what's happening to every 5 sentences of the main character. As he turned to go, he forced some water from his mouth, and as an experiment, there was a sudden noise that surprises him. He tried it again, and the air, before he could fall through the snow, the drops of water became ice that broke with noise. He knew that the 50 below zero water was the mouth made a noise when it hit the snow, but it had done that in the air. Undoubtedly, it was colder than 50 below. Imagery can be defined as a group of words that create a mental picture by appealing to the senses. Okay.
So the last aspect is the irony, which is represented in the story, and the irony of this story, the implicit message is the fact that nature is usually the source of life and the one who gives life to the human. However, in this narrative, nature is the one that takes that life away from the man. Irony refers to this surprising, amusing, or interesting contrast between reality and expectation.
So that it completes us, and we can tell that the unity of the story is how all of the little aspects and different details that the author creates to make these characters and symbols are the ones that create the irony. That's the one that tells us nature gives us life, but then it takes it away. So that's the irony, and that's the unity, and that's why we analyzed it, this piece of literature. Thank you very much.